I stared at the loan documents spread across our kitchen table, my husband's expensive pen heavy in my hand. 24 hours ago, I would have signed without question. But 24 hours ago, I died in a car accident at 35, broken and penniless, while my husband built a new life with the woman I was about to financially enable. 24 hours ago, I woke up in this same kitchen, 3 years in the past, with every devastating memory intact. Just sign it, Claire. David's voice carried that edge of irritation I'd spent a decade trying to avoid. It's just a formality. You know I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Important. The word tasted like ash. I knew exactly how important this loan was. $300,000 to help his business partner, Melissa, expand her boutique consulting firm. In my previous life, I'd signed these papers with a trusting smile. Within 2 years, Melissa and David would be sleeping together. Within 3, they'd be engaged. And I'd be declaring bankruptcy to escape the debt when Melissa's company and our marriage collapsed. Except this time, I was going to declare bankruptcy first. Who is Melissa again? I asked, though I knew every detail of her life. 28, ambitious, beautiful, in that calculated way that made other women feel frumpy. She'd been circling David for months, and I'd been too naive to see it. David's jaw tightened. My business partner? We've been over this. Her consulting firm is taking off, and she needs capital to hire more staff. The bank requires a cosigner with established credit. Your score is better than mine. Why doesn't her boyfriend cosign? She's single. Claire, we've been discussing this for weeks. This is a major opportunity for both of us. When her firm grows, my architecture practice grows. We're collaborating on the Davidson Tower project. The Davidson Tower. I'd heard about that building every day for 2 years. In my first life, it had been David's obsession. His ticket to the Bay Leagues. He'd spent countless hours at Melissa's office, working on proposals, missing dinners, forgetting anniversaries. I'd believed every excuse. I picked up the pen, watching David's shoulders relax slightly. He thought he'd won. He had no idea I was about to burn his entire world down, but I couldn't be obvious. I needed him to believe everything was normal while I dismantled our financial life piece by piece. Okay, I said softly. I trust you. The lie felt powerful on my tongue. In my previous life, those words had been true, and they'd destroyed me. Now, they were a weapon. I signed my name in careful script, watching the ink dry on my financial suicide pact. David smiled, that same warm smile I'd fallen in love with in college, and kissed my forehead. You're the best wife a man could ask for. I smiled back, already calculating. I had 3 years of future knowledge and a burning desire for vengeance. David and Melissa had stolen everything from me once. This time, I'd make sure they lost everything first. The first step was establishing my escape route. The next morning, while David left for an early meeting with Melissa, just going over some Davidson Tower details, hun, I drove to a bank across town. Not our usual bank where David knew all the managers, but a small credit union where I could open accounts in my name alone. I'd like to open a personal checking and savings account, I told the representative, a middle-aged woman named Patricia with kind eyes. Of course. Will you be adding your spouse to the accounts? No, these are for my personal finances. I'm starting a small business. Another lie, smooth as silk. I was getting good at this. In my previous life, I'd never had separate finances. David had convinced me that joint accounts showed trust, unity, partnership. Meanwhile, he'd been draining our savings to fund romantic getaways with Melissa, disguised as business trips. I deposited $5,000, money from my freelance graphic design work that David barely acknowledged. In my first life, that money had gone into our joint account, absorbed into David's spending without a trace. This time, it was my war chest. What kind of business? Patricia asked pleasantly as she processed the paperwork. Consulting? The irony made me smile. Helping people avoid financial mistakes. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly redirected my income. Every freelance payment, every small design job went into my separate accounts. I told David the work had dried up, that clients were scarce. He barely noticed. He was too busy with Melissa and the Davidson Tower. I knew from experience that I had about 4 months before David and Melissa's affair became physical. 4 months to prepare my nuclear option. But first, I needed to understand exactly how deep their current relationship went. On a Tuesday afternoon, I told David I was meeting my sister for lunch. Instead, I parked outside Melissa's office building, a trendy converted warehouse in the Arts District. Melissa Hartley Consulting occupied the third floor. I'd been there once in my previous life for a dinner party where Melissa had touched David's arm too often and laughed too loudly at his jokes while I'd felt frumpy in my department store dress. I watched the entrance for an hour before David arrived, carrying 2 coffee cups. He used his own key to enter the building. His own key. They were already sleeping together. The realization hit differently this time. In my first life, I'd been devastated when I finally discovered the affair, crushed by betrayal. Now, armed with foreknowledge, I felt only cold satisfaction. They'd moved faster this time around, which meant they were sloppy. Good. I took photos of David entering with his key, time-stamped and geotagged. Evidence for later. That night, David came home at 9, smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't mine. "How was your day?" I asked, setting dinner on the table. I'd made his favorite, pot roast with roasted vegetables, playing the perfect wife. Long, the Davidson project is consuming everything. Melissa and I barely broke for lunch. Sounds intense. It is, but it'll be worth it. Once this project is approved, we're talking about a $2 million contract. My cut would be substantial. I knew the Davidson Tower would never be built. In my previous life, the project had collapsed when the developer was indicted for fraud. David and Melissa had been left with nothing but debt and each other. By then, I'd already been discarded. "That's wonderful, honey." I poured him wine, watching him relax into the domestic scene. "I'm so proud of you." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I know I've been distant lately. Work has been crazy, but I appreciate you supporting me through this. Not every wife would be so understanding." Understanding. I'd been understanding in my first life, right up until I discovered the credit card statements showing hotel rooms and jewelry I'd never received. I'd been understanding when he'd asked for a divorce, claiming we'd grown apart. I'd been understanding when he'd married Melissa 6 months later, while I'd struggled to pay rent on a studio apartment. My credit destroyed by the loan I'd co-signed. This time, I'd be understanding in a different way. I understood exactly how to destroy them both. 3 weeks after signing the loan documents, Melissa's 300 Nizan hit her business account. I knew because I'd created a fake social media profile and befriended one of her employees, a chatty junior consultant named Ashley who loved to share office gossip. According to Ashley's posts, Melissa was on a hiring spree. 3 new consultants, a full-time marketing manager, and a receptionist. She'd also leased additional office space on the 2nd floor. Rapid expansion funded by debt, just like I remembered. What I didn't remember from my first life was the Porsche. I was picking up groceries when I saw it. A gleaming silver Porsche 911 parked outside Melissa's building, dealer plates still attached. Through the window of her office, I could see Melissa showing it off to her employees, champagne glasses in hand. A $90,000 car, bought with loan money that was supposed to fund business expansion. I took more photos. That night, I made copies of all our financial documents while David was in the shower. Bank statements, credit card bills, tax returns, the loan paperwork. Everything went into a locked safe deposit box at my new credit union. I also did something I'd never done in my first life. I checked David's credit report. The loan appeared as expected, $300,000 of new debt with both our names attached. But there were other surprises. A credit card I didn't know about, maxed out at $15,000. A personal loan for $50,000 taken out 2 months ago. Our mortgage showed 3 missed payments from last year, before we'd supposedly caught up. David had been lying about our finances for over a year. In my previous life, I hadn't discovered any of this until after the divorce, when creditors started calling me. By then, David's debts had become my debts, his bad credit tanking my score. I'd spent years rebuilding, working 2 jobs, living in a tiny apartment, while he'd moved into Melissa's condo and started fresh. Not this time. I pulled our joint credit card statements and began documenting. Charges at expensive restaurants I'd never visited. Hotel rooms in cities David had claimed to visit for conferences. Jewelry from Tiffany, $8,000 worth in the past 6 months. I'd never received a single piece. The evidence was overwhelming. David wasn't just planning to leave me, he was actively building a life with Melissa while draining our finances to fund it. Perfect. I needed him to keep spending. keep accumulating debt. The bigger the hole he dug, the more satisfying the collapse would be. Over the next month, I became the perfect wife. I smiled when David came home late. I didn't question the mysterious charges on our credit cards. I encouraged him to take Melissa out for business dinners to discuss the Davidson Tower. I even suggested he buy a new car. His Audi was getting old. Maybe a BMW would better suit his growing success. David ate it up. He bought the BMW, a sleek black sedan with every upgrade, $85,000, financed at 6-month interest because our credit was already starting to slip. Meanwhile, I quietly liquidated everything I could touch. My retirement account rolled into an IRA in my name only. The savings bonds my grandmother had left me cashed and deposited into my private account. My small investment portfolio sold and transferred. I also started documenting everything, photos of David and Melissa together, screenshots of their increasingly flirty text messages. I'd installed monitoring software on our shared iPad that David used to message her, copies of every receipt, every bank statement, every credit card charge. I was building a case, but not for divorce court. I had a different plan entirely. The bankruptcy plan required precision timing. I needed to wait until David and Melissa were maximally leveraged, maximally confident, and maximally unprepared. I needed them to feel invincible right before I pulled the foundation out from under them. That opportunity came in the form of a second loan. 2 months after the first loan, David came home with more paperwork. "Melissa needs additional funding," he said, spreading documents across the kitchen table like he had before. "The business is growing faster than expected. She needs another $150,000 to keep up with demand." I looked at the papers, my heart rate steady. In my previous life, I'd signed this loan too. It had been the final nail in my financial coffin. "That's a lot of money, David." "It's an investment in our future. When Melissa's firm goes public, we'll be looking at serious returns. She's already talking to venture capitalists." Melissa's firm would never go public. In 18 months, it would collapse under the weight of its own debt, taking everyone associated with it down. But David didn't know that. He was drunk on the fantasy of wealth and the excitement of his affair. "I don't know," I said slowly. "We're already stretched thin. My freelance work isn't bringing in much, and with the new BMW payment..." "Claire?" David's voice took on that patronizing tone I'd once found comforting. Before I understood, it meant he thought I was stupid. "You have to trust me on this. I know what I'm doing. Melissa and I have a solid business plan. The Davidson Tower alone will pay for everything twice over." "What if it doesn't?" "It will." He was getting frustrated now. "Look, I need you to sign this. The bank requires both our signatures again. Your credit is still better than mine." Not for long, I thought. "Okay," I said finally. "But I want to meet Melissa first. If I'm investing this much money, I should know who I'm investing in." David's face flickered, just for a moment, with something that looked like panic. Then he smiled. "Of course, that's totally reasonable. How about dinner this weekend? I'll set it up." I knew he was already calculating how to make sure Melissa behaved appropriately, how to keep their relationship looking purely professional. The thought made me smile. That sounds perfect. The restaurant was pretentious, the kind of place with $40 appetizers and waiters who described each dish like it was a work of art. David's choice, naturally. He liked to show off. Melissa arrived 15 minutes late, making an entrance in a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She was beautiful. I'd give her that. Sharp cheekbones, perfect hair, expensive jewelry, the kind of woman who looked like she belonged in a BMW or a Porsche. "Claire." She embraced me like we were old friends, her perfume overwhelming. "I've heard so much about you. David talks about you constantly." Lies flowed from her like water. In my previous life, I'd believed her warmth was genuine. Now I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the way she assessed me, and found me lacking. "It's wonderful to finally meet you," I said, matching her fake enthusiasm. "David says you two are doing amazing work together." "We make a great team." She glanced at David, and something passed between them, a look that lasted half a second too long. Through dinner, I played my role perfectly. The supportive wife, impressed by Melissa's accomplishments, understanding of David's long hours. I asked about her business, praised her expansion plans, and listened to her description of the consulting services she provided, strategic organizational optimization, and other corporate buzzwords that meant very little. "And the loan has been so helpful," Melissa said, touching David's hand across the table. "I can't thank you both enough for believing in me." I noticed she didn't mention the Porsche or the second-floor office expansion or the fact that her business expansion seemed to consist primarily of expensive furniture and designer clothes for herself. "We're happy to help," I said sweetly. "Actually, David mentioned you need additional funding." Melissa's eyes lit up. "Yes, the business is growing so fast. I've got 3 major clients ready to sign, but I need to hire more consultants to handle the workload. It's a good problem to have." "It sounds exciting." "It is. And honestly, Claire, you should come work with me. David says you do graphic design. I could use someone to handle our marketing materials. The pay would be great." The audacity was breathtaking. She was sleeping with my husband, spending money I'd co-signed for, and now she wanted to employ me so I could watch their relationship up close. "That's so generous," I said. "I'll definitely think about it." Under the table, David squeezed my knee, proud of me for getting along with his mistress, proud of me for being so naive. After dinner in the parking lot, I watched Melissa kiss David on the cheek, lingering just a moment too long before climbing into her Porsche. David walked me to our car, his arm around my waist. "See? She's great, right? You understand now why I'm so excited about this partnership? She seems very ambitious." "She is. And smart. This is the kind of opportunity that could set us up for life, Claire. I need you to trust me." I looked up at him, this man I'd loved for 12 years, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "I do trust you, David." Completely. The next morning, I signed the second loan documents. David thought he'd won. Melissa thought she'd won. They had no idea they were signing their own financial death warrants. Now I just had to wait for the perfect moment to pull the trigger. The moment came 3 months later, on a rainy Tuesday in November. I'd been monitoring David and Melissa's relationship carefully. The texts had gotten more explicit, the late nights more frequent. Ashley, my unwitting informant, had posted photos from Melissa's office Halloween party showing David and Melissa in matching couples costumes, business partners, who'd clearly coordinated their outfits. The affair was an open secret among Melissa's employees. It was only a matter of time before it became an open secret everywhere else. But more importantly, the Davidson Tower project had just hit a major snag. The developer, Marcus Davidson, was under investigation for fraud. The news had broken that morning, sending shockwaves through the local business community. I knew from my previous life that the investigation would lead to indictments, prison time, and the complete collapse of Davidson's real estate empire. Every project he touched would die, including the tower that David and Melissa had bet everything on. In my first life, this had been the beginning of the end. David and Melissa had tried to salvage the project, thrown good money after bad, and eventually lost everything. By the time they'd given up, they'd racked up another $200,000 in debt, trying to keep Melissa's firm afloat. This time, I was going to accelerate the timeline. I sat in my car outside a bankruptcy attorney's office, rain drumming on the windshield. In my purse was a folder containing every piece of evidence I'd compiled over the past 4 months. Documentation of David's hidden debts, his affair with Melissa, the fraudulent use of loan funds to buy personal luxuries, and, most importantly, documentation showing that I'd been financially coerced into co-signing loans I didn't fully understand, loans that were now clearly being used for purposes other than their stated intent. The attorney, Sarah Chen, had been recommended by an online support group for people recovering from financial abuse. She specialized in complex bankruptcies and divorce cases involving deceptive spouses. Mrs. Morrison. Sarah was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses. "Come in. You sounded stressed on the phone." I followed her into a modern office overlooking the city. Through the rain-streaked windows, I could see the construction site where the Davidson Tower was supposed to rise. Empty now, just a hole in the ground and some half-hearted scaffolding. "Thank you for seeing me on short notice. You said it was urgent, that your husband has been accumulating debt in your name." I opened the folder and spread the evidence across her desk. Bank statements, credit reports, loan documents, photos of Melissa's Porsche and David's BMW. Screenshots of text messages between David and Melissa planning romantic getaways. Sarah studied everything in silence, her expression growing grimmer with each page. "How long has this been going on?" she asked finally. "The affair? About 4 months, I think. The financial deception? At least a year, maybe longer. And you've co-signed for over $400,000 in loans for his mistress's business?" "Yes." Jesus. Sarah sat back in her chair. "Mrs. Morrison, I have to ask, why didn't you come to me sooner? This situation is bad. Your credit score must be tanking." "It is. I've been monitoring it. We're down to 620 and falling. You need to file for divorce immediately and try to separate your finances before—" "I'm not here for a divorce attorney," I interrupted. "Not yet. I'm here to file for bankruptcy." Sarah blinked. "I'm sorry? I want to file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy as soon as possible, this week if we can manage it." "Mrs. Morrison, bankruptcy is a serious step. It will destroy your credit for years. Have you considered other options? Debt consolidation, negotiation with creditors?" "I've considered everything." I met her eyes. "I want to file for bankruptcy now, while I'm still married to David. I want the bankruptcy to include all of our joint debts, the loans, the credit cards, everything. I want it to be the most comprehensive, aggressive bankruptcy filing legally possible." Understanding dawned in Sarah's eyes. "You want to take him down with you?" "I want to protect myself from debts that were incurred through deception. If that happens to destroy his credit in the process—" I smiled. "That's just a side effect." Sarah leaned forward, studying me with new interest. "Walk me through your thinking." "David made me co-sign loans under false pretenses. He said the money was for legitimate business expansion. Instead, it's being used to fund his affair and buy luxury items. When Melissa's business collapses, and it will collapse, the Davidson Tower project is already falling apart. I'll be stuck with over $400,000 in debt that I can't pay. Plus all of David's hidden credit card debt and personal loans. You could argue fraud, try to get the loans discharged. That would take years and might not work. This way, I file bankruptcy now, before everything completely implodes. I discharge all the joint debts. My credit is ruined, yes, but so is David's. And more importantly, when Melissa's business fails and she tries to come after us for the loan money, there's nothing to collect. The debt is discharged. And you're protected." "Exactly." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, reviewing the documents again. "You've thought this through." "Very carefully." "What about assets? The house, cars, retirement accounts?" "The house is mortgaged to the hilt. David refinanced last year without telling me, took out $100,000 in equity that I can't account for. The cars are financed. My retirement account is in my name only, and it's under the protected threshold. I don't have much to lose. And David has been hiding assets in accounts I don't have access to. I have evidence of that too. When the bankruptcy trustee starts investigating, they're going to find a lot of interesting things." Sarah smiled, a predatory expression that reminded me why I'd chosen her. "You want the bankruptcy to trigger an investigation into his finances. Among other things?" "Mrs. Morrison, I have to warn you. This is going to be messy. When you file, David will know immediately. He's going to be furious. If he's as controlling as you suggest, he might become dangerous. I'm prepared for that. I have a safety deposit box with copies of everything. I've been moving money into a separate account. I have a plan. And after the bankruptcy, then I file for divorce. By then, David's credit will be destroyed, his affair will be exposed, and Melissa's business will be in free fall. They'll have nothing. They'll deserve nothing." Sarah studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, let's do it. But we need to move fast. If David gets wind of this before we file, he could try to hide more assets or take out more debt in your name. How soon can we file? Need 3 days to prepare the paperwork? Can you keep up the act for 3 more days?" I thought about going home to David, pretending everything was normal, playing the devoted wife while I prepared to detonate our entire financial life. "Yes," I said, "I can do that." The next 3 days were the longest of my life, both lives. I cooked David's favorite meals. I smiled when he came home late. I listened to him complain about the Davidson Tower investigation and how unfair it was that one man's crimes could ruin so many innocent people's projects. "Melissa is devastated," he said over dinner Wednesday night. She'd been counting on the Davidson project to be her firm's flagship success story. Now everything is in limbo. "That's terrible," I murmured, passing him the bread basket. "The worst part is, we're still on the hook for office rent and employee salaries. The loan money is mostly spent, and now we don't have the revenue we'd projected to pay it back." "What will you do?" David shrugged, cutting into his steak. "We'll figure it out. Melissa is resourceful. We always land on our feet." "We, not she. We." "I'm sure you will," I said. Thursday, David came home with news that Melissa had been approached by venture capitalists interested in her firm. "They see the potential, even without the Davidson project," he said excitedly. "This could be even bigger than we thought." I knew the VC interest was smoke and mirrors. In my previous life, Melissa had chased investor meetings for months, always almost closing a deal that never quite materialized. She was good at the pitch, bad at the follow-through. "That's wonderful, honey." Friday morning, I kissed David goodbye like always, watched him drive away in his BMW, and then grabbed the folder Sarah had prepared for me. The bankruptcy petition was comprehensive. It listed every debt: the 2 loans to Melissa, the credit cards, David's hidden personal loan, the refinanced mortgage, both car payments. It documented our income and assets, showing clearly that we were underwater with no way to climb out. It also included exhibits: photos of Melissa's Porsche with a notation of its purchase price and date, David's BMW, credit card statements showing charges at romantic restaurants and hotels, text messages between David and Melissa discussing their relationship. The evidence wasn't just financial, it was personal. It showed a pattern of deception, fraud, and betrayal. Sarah had been thorough. "Are you ready?" she asked when I arrived at her office. "Yes. Once we file this electronically, it's done. The automatic stay goes into effect immediately. Creditors can't contact you, but David will be notified within hours. You need to be prepared for his reaction." "I have a plan." "Where will you go?" "I've rented a short-term apartment across town. Cash payment, not in my name. I moved some essentials there yesterday. As soon as we file, I'm going straight there." "Good. Do you have a restraining order prepared?" "My divorce attorney is standing by. As soon as David makes any threatening moves, we file." Sarah nodded approvingly. "You've really thought of everything." "I've had time to plan." She turned to her computer, fingers poised over the keyboard. "Last chance to back out." I thought about David and Melissa, probably in her office right now, planning their future together, planning how to manage the fallout from the Davidson investigation, how to keep the money flowing, how to eventually get rid of me once they no longer needed my good credit and financial stability. "File it," I said. Sarah hit enter. Somewhere in the digital infrastructure of the bankruptcy court, our petition was logged, processed, and assigned a case number. The automatic stay activated, our assets were frozen, our creditors were notified, and David Morrison's carefully constructed life began to collapse. I didn't go home, I drove straight to my apartment, a furnished studio in a building that didn't ask questions, and waited. The first call came at 11:37 a.m. "Claire, what the fuck did you do?" David's voice was strangled with rage. "I just got a call from our bank. They said you filed for bankruptcy without talking to me." "We're drowning in debt, David. I did what I had to do." "You had no right. This is going to ruin everything. My business, my reputation, my credit." "Our credit," I corrected. "We're married, remember? What ruins you ruins me. That's what you told me when you made me co-sign those loans." "This is different. Claire, you need to withdraw the filing right now, before this gets out of hand." "I can't do that. It's already filed." "Then unfiled it. Call your attorney and fix this." "David, we owe over $500,000. The Davidson Tower is dead. Melissa's business is failing. We can't pay any of this back. Bankruptcy is the only option." Silence on the other end. Then, "Where are you?" "Somewhere safe." "What does that mean? Are you at home?" "I'm coming there right now." "I'm not at the house, and I don't think it's a good idea for us to see each other until you calm down." "Calm down? You just destroyed my life and you want me to calm down?" "I saved us from financial ruin. You should be thanking me. Thank you? His laugh was bitter. You're insane. You know that? Actually, insane. When I find you... I hung up. The second call came from Melissa. I let it go to voicemail. Claire, this is Melissa. I need you to call me back immediately. What you did today affects my business. Those loans were for legitimate business purposes, and you can't just discharge them without consequences. Call me. Now. I deleted the message. Over the next hour, my phone exploded. David called 17 times. Melissa called 9. I ignored all of them. Then Sarah called. The trustee has been assigned, she said. Your case is moving fast. They want to do the 341 meeting next week. The 341 meeting, where the bankruptcy trustee questioned debtors about their finances, where David and I would have to appear together and answer questions under oath. Will David have to be there? Yes. As your spouse, his finances are relevant to the case. He'll be questioned extensively. Good. Claire, I have to warn you. The trustee is going to dig into everything. The loans to Melissa, David's hidden debts, the timeline of when you became aware of the affair. It's going to get ugly. I'm counting on it. That evening, I ordered takeout and sat in my bare apartment, watching the sunset over the city. My phone continued to ring. David, Melissa, even some of David's friends calling to lecture me about my impulsive decision. I ignored them all. At 9 p.m., there was a knock on my door. I checked the peephole and saw 2 police officers. My heart jumped, but I'd prepared for this too. I opened the door with the chains still on. Claire Morrison? The older officer asked. Yes. We're doing a welfare check. Your husband reported you missing. I'm not missing. I left my husband and I'm staying somewhere safe while I file for divorce. Are you in any danger, ma'am? Not currently, but I have concerns about my husband's reaction to my bankruptcy filing. I may need a restraining order. The officers exchanged glances. Has he threatened you? Not explicitly, but he's called me over 30 times today, and I'm afraid he might become violent. Would you like us to file a report? Yes, please. After the officers left, I called my divorce attorney, Janet Rodriguez. She'd been waiting for this call. It's time, I said. File for divorce first thing Monday morning. Cite irreconcilable differences and financial infidelity. I want everything in there. The affair, the hidden debts, the coercion to cosign loans, everything. Are you sure? The bankruptcy is already going to be a nightmare. Adding a divorce on top of it? I'm sure. I want him to wake up Monday morning to divorce papers on top of everything else. You're really going scorched earth. He destroyed my life once. This time I'm making sure he can't do it again. Janet was quiet for a moment. Okay, I'll have the papers ready. Claire, be careful. Men like David don't take well to losing control. I know. That's why I'm not giving him the chance to find me. The weekend was surreal. I stayed in my apartment ordering groceries for delivery, avoiding all calls and messages. David's voicemails grew increasingly desperate, then angry, then threatening. You can't hide forever, Claire. We need to talk about this like adults. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but you're only making things worse for yourself. Fine. Stay gone, but you're going to regret this. I have lawyers too. Good ones. They're going to tear you apart in court. Let him threaten. Every voicemail was more evidence of his instability. On Saturday, Ashley, my unwitting spy in Melissa's office, posted a cryptic message on social media. When your boss has a total meltdown on a Saturday, I could imagine the scene. Melissa discovering that the loans she'd counted on were about to be discharged in bankruptcy. Melissa realizing that her Porsche, her office expansion, her entire carefully constructed empire was built on debt that was about to evaporate. By Sunday, the local business journal had picked up the story. Local architect couple files for bankruptcy amid real estate scandal, the headline read. They didn't mention Melissa by name, but they noted that Morrison had co-signed significant loans for a business partner whose firm is now in financial difficulty. The article didn't get everything right, but it got enough. David's professional reputation was starting to crack. Monday morning, Janet filed the divorce papers. By noon, David had been served at his office. He called me immediately. Divorce? His voice was shaking. You filed for divorce? Yes. Claire, please, we can work through this. The bankruptcy, the stress. I know I haven't been the best husband lately, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, take a vacation, reconnect. You're having an affair with Melissa? Silence. I know, David. I've known for months. I have photos, text messages, credit card statements. I know about the hotels, the jewelry, the romantic dinners. I know everything. Claire, it's not what you think. Save it for your divorce lawyer. I'm done. You can't do this. You can't just destroy everything we've built. You already destroyed it. I'm just finishing what you started. I will fight this. I'll fight the bankruptcy, the divorce, all of it. I will make sure you end up with nothing. Good luck with that. Your credit is ruined, your reputation is in tatters, and your mistress's business is circling the drain. But please, tell me more about how you're going to fix it. Hung up. The 341 meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday, 7 days away. 7 days for David to stew in his rage and realize just how completely he'd lost control. I spent that week preparing, meeting with Sarah and Janet, documenting every threatening call and message, building my case for the divorce. I also watched Melissa's world collapse from a distance. On Tuesday, one of her major clients announced they were terminating their contract, citing concerns about financial stability. By Thursday, 2 of her new consultants had quit, posting on LinkedIn about unprofessional workplace behavior and management issues. By Friday, Melissa's office was dark. Ashley posted a confused message. Apparently we're all working from home until further notice? No explanation given? The dominoes were falling exactly as I'd planned. The 341 meeting took place in a bland conference room at the courthouse. David arrived with his attorney, a slick corporate type named Harrison, Webb who looked like he charged $5 an hour to tell people what they wanted to hear. David wouldn't look at me. He sat rigid in his chair, jaw clenched, radiating fury. The bankruptcy trustee, a woman named Margaret Foster, was in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd clearly read our petition carefully. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, she began, I've reviewed your filing and I have some questions. Let's start with the loans. Mrs. Morrison, you co-signed 2 loans totaling $450,000 for a business called Melissa Hartley Consulting. Is that correct? Yes, I said. And what was your understanding of how these loans would be used? I was told they were for legitimate business expansion, hiring staff, leasing office space, investing in technology, and marketing. And were they used for those purposes? No, a significant portion was used to purchase personal luxury items, a Porsche for Ms. Hartley, among other things. Margaret's eyebrows rose. Mr. Morrison, is that accurate? David's attorney leaned forward. My client disputes that characterization. Ms. Hartley's Porsche was purchased as a business vehicle for client meetings. A $90,000 sports car is a business vehicle? Margaret's tone was dry. High-end consulting requires a certain image. What about the jewelry? The romantic getaways to Napa and Hawaii? Were those also necessary business expenses? David's face flushed red. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Margaret pulled out a folder. Because I have credit card statements showing charges at luxury hotels and jewelry stores, all paid for with cards that Mrs. Morrison co-signed for. Did you discuss these expenses with your wife? Those are personal charges. They have nothing to do with the business loans. But they contribute to your overall debt picture, which is what we're here to discuss. Mr. Morrison, you currently owe approximately $537,000 in various debts. Is that correct? That includes the business loans that shouldn't be in this bankruptcy. Is it correct? Yes, David admitted grudgingly. And your annual income is what? Approximately $120,000. So you owe more than 4 times your annual income, with no clear path to repayment. Does that seem financially sustainable to you? David's attorney jumped in. The bankruptcy filing was premature. My client and his business partner were in negotiations with investors who could have provided additional capital. Investors who have since withdrawn their interest after learning about the bankruptcy filing? Silence. Margaret turned to me. Mrs. Morrison, when did you first become aware that these loans were being used for purposes other than stated? About 4 months ago. I began investigating after noticing discrepancies in our finances. And why did you wait until now to file for bankruptcy? I was documenting the extent of the problem. I wanted to make sure I had a complete picture. Before taking such a serious step, What about the affair? When did you learn about your husband's relationship with Ms. Hartley? David stood up abruptly. This is irrelevant. My personal life has nothing to do with— Sit down, Mr. Morrison. Margaret's voice was sharp. Your personal life is extremely relevant when you've been using marital assets to fund that relationship. Mrs. Morrison, please answer the question. I discovered evidence of the affair around the same time I became aware of the financial issues, 4 months ago. And you've since filed for divorce? Yes. Margaret made notes. I'm going to need to review all financial records going back 3 years. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan documents, business records from Melissa Hartley Consulting. I'm also going to need Ms. Hartley to appear for questioning. David's attorney objected. Ms. Hartley is not a party to this bankruptcy. She's a creditor, one who received $450,000 in dischargeable debt from the debtors. She has a material interest in this case, and I have the authority to question her about how the loan funds were used. We'll need time to arrange. You have 1 week. Next Tuesday, same time. I want Ms. Hartley here, and I want every document I've requested. If I don't get full cooperation, I'll recommend an investigation into bankruptcy fraud. David looked like he wanted to explode. His attorney put a restraining hand on his arm. We'll comply, Harrison said tightly. As we left the courthouse, David finally looked at me. His expression was pure hatred. You're going to regret this, he said quietly. I don't know what you think you're winning here, but you're not. You're destroying yourself, along with me. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll have the satisfaction of watching you fall first. The following week was chaos. The local media picked up the story of the bankruptcy trustee investigating potential fraud in the Melissa Hartley Consulting loans. It became a minor scandal. Local architect and rising consulting star under investigation for misuse of funds. Melissa's remaining clients fled. Her employees quit. The office space was quietly surrendered, the furniture sold off to pay back rent. And through it all, David and Melissa's relationship fractured under the pressure. I knew this because Melissa called me. This is all your fault, she hissed. You couldn't just be a good wife and support your husband. You had to be vindictive and petty. I supported him, I said calmly. I co-signed your loans. I trusted him, and he repaid that trust by sleeping with you and lying about where the money was going. The money went to legitimate business expenses. Like your Porsche, that was a business necessity. Tell that to the bankruptcy trustee. I'm sure she'll be very interested in your definition of necessity. Melissa was breathing hard. You don't understand the pressure we were under. The Davidson Tower falling apart, the investors backing out. We were trying to save everything. By buying luxury cars and taking romantic vacations, those were investments in relationships. Business requires honesty. You lied about what you were using the money for. David lied to me. Now you're both facing the consequences. I hope you're happy, Melissa spat. You've destroyed David's career, my business, and your own financial future. What exactly did you win? My self-respect, I said, and hung up. The second 341 meeting was even more brutal than the first. Melissa showed up looking haggard, her designer armor cracking. Her attorney was a public defender type who looked overwhelmed by the complexity of the case. Margaret went through the loan documents line by line, asking Melissa to justify each expense. Office equipment that didn't exist. Marketing campaigns that were never launched. Employee salaries for positions that were mysteriously vacant. Ms. Hartley, you claimed you needed $300,000 to hire 3 new consultants. How many did you actually hire? 2, initially, but the market conditions changed. And these 2 consultants, how much were they paid? Melissa shuffled through papers. $85,000 each, annually. So $170,000 total, that leaves $130,000 unaccounted for from the first loan. Where did it go? Operating expenses, office rent, utilities, insurance, technology infrastructure. Your office rent was $3,000 per month. Even with utilities and insurance, that's maybe $50,000 annually. Where's the other $80,000? Melissa's attorney tried to object, but Margaret cut him off. Ms. Hartley, I have documentation showing you purchased a Porsche for $90,000 2 weeks after receiving the loan funds. Did you use loan money to buy that car? It was a business vehicle. Yes or no? Did you use money from the loan Mr. and Mrs. Morrison co-signed to purchase a personal vehicle? Melissa's face was red. Yes, but it was always intended to be a business asset. And the second loan, $150,000 that you claimed was needed for additional hiring. How many additional employees did you hire with that money? Silence. Ms. Hartley? None. The market shifted. The Davidson Tower project collapsed. I had to pivot the business strategy. Pivot it to what? Your business is now defunct. Your office is closed. Your employees have all resigned. What exactly did you do with $150,000? More silence. Margaret leaned back in her chair. I'm going to recommend that the U.S. Attorney's Office investigate this case for potential fraud. Ms. Hartley, you obtained $450,000 in loans under false pretenses, used the money for personal expenses, and have no legitimate business operations to show for it. That's textbook loan fraud. Melissa went pale. This is a misunderstanding. Save it for the federal investigators. Margaret turned to David. Mr. Morrison, you facilitated these loans. You convinced your wife to co-sign despite knowing the money would be misused. You're equally culpable. David found his voice. I believed in Melissa's business. You thought you could use your wife's good credit to fund your girlfriend's lifestyle while building a romantic relationship behind your wife's back. That's not business judgment. That's fraud and infidelity. Harrison tried to salvage the situation. Ms. Foster, my client made poor personal choices, but that doesn't constitute criminal fraud. That's for the U.S. Attorney to decide. My job is to determine whether the Morrisons' debts are dischargeable, and frankly, I'm inclined to discharge everything. Mrs. Morrison was clearly a victim of her husband's deception. The debts were incurred through fraud perpetrated against her. She should not be held responsible for them. I felt a surge of vindication so strong it was almost physical. Margaret continued. However, Mr. Morrison, you participated in the fraud. I'm recommending that while Mrs. Morrison's portion of the debts be discharged, you remain personally liable for the loans you helped perpetrate. David shot to his feet. That's not fair. We're married. The debts are joint. You're married now, but Mrs. Morrison has filed for divorce, and I understand the proceedings are moving quickly. Once you're divorced, the court can assign liability separately based on who actually benefited from the debts. And Mr. Morrison, you're the one who benefited from maintaining a relationship with Ms. Hartley while using your wife's credit to fund it. David looked like he'd been punched. Melissa looked worse, realization dawning that she might face federal charges. As we left the courthouse, David caught my arm in the hallway. Claire, please, we can still fix this. Drop the divorce. Tell the trustee you were confused, emotional. We'll repay the loans together, slowly, over time. We can still save this. I looked at his hand on my arm and then at his face, this man who had been my husband for 12 years, who I'd loved, trusted, supported, who had betrayed me so thoroughly that even now he thought he could manipulate me into saving him. Let go of me? I said quietly. Claire, let go. He released my arm and I walked away without looking back. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. The settlement was brutal for David. Because the bankruptcy trustee had determined that he'd participated in fraud against me, the divorce court assigned him full responsibility for the loans. He also had to split the remaining marital assets, which wasn't much after the bankruptcy, but it meant he walked away with nothing, while I kept my retirement account and personal savings. The house was foreclosed. David's BMW was repossessed. He moved into a studio apartment and took a job at a mid-tier architecture firm. His dreams of prestige and success evaporated. Melissa fared worse. The U.S. Attorney's Office did investigate, and while they didn't bring criminal charges, the publicity destroyed what remained of her reputation. She closed her business officially, filed for personal bankruptcy, and last I heard was working as a receptionist at a dentist's office. She and David lasted about 6 months after everything fell apart. Turned out their relationship couldn't survive without the excitement of deception and the fantasy of success. They had nothing in common except mutual resentment. As for me, I started over. My credit was ruined, yes, but I'd prepared for that. I had my separate accounts, my freelance income, and a clean conscience. More importantly, I had my knowledge from my previous life. I knew which clients would be reliable, which projects would succeed, which investments would pay off. Within a year, I'd built my freelance graphic design work into a small agency. Within 2 years, I'd bought a condo, cash, no mortgage needed. By year 3, I was making more money than David and I had ever made together. I never remarried. Some people asked if I was bitter, if I'd given up on love. But I hadn't given up on anything. I'd simply learned that the most important relationship was the one I had with Mictus. Besides, I had something better than romance. I had justice. One evening, about 4 years after the bankruptcy, I ran into David at a coffee shop. He looked older, defeated. He was with a woman I didn't recognize. Younger, plain, nothing like Melissa. He saw me and froze. "Claire," he said awkwardly, "this is Sarah? Sarah, this is my ex-wife." "Nice to meet you," Sarah said with genuine warmth, completely unaware of the history. "You too," I said, meaning it. Poor woman had no idea what she was getting into. David and I looked at each other across the coffee shop, years of history hanging between us. I wondered if he thought about that loan document I'd signed at our kitchen table. If he remembered how confident he'd been that I'd never figure out what he was doing. "You look good," he said finally. "I heard your business is doing well." "It is. I'm happy." "That's good. I'm glad." He didn't look glad. He looked like a man who'd gambled everything and lost. "Take care, David," I said, and walked past him without another word. Outside, the evening air was cool and fresh. My phone buzzed with a notification, a new client wanting to discuss a major project. 6 figures at least. I smiled and answered the call, walking toward my car. A nice car, paid for in cash, with no one's name on the title but mine. In my previous life, I'd died broken and alone, while David and Melissa built their future on the ruins of my credit and trust. This time, I'd declared bankruptcy first and watched them destroy each other. This time, I'd won. And it felt better than I'd ever imagined.